Welcome to If You Live It. Welcome to another video where we break down and fight a conversation that has to do with spiritual truths, ultimate truths, religious truths, things that are out in the world that will benefit us because it will bring us closer to God. That will bring more truth into our life. Not more nonsense, not more anger, not more worry, not more guilt, more truth. We have a special two-part series here where we're going to look at the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. And then we're going to get into the Eightfold Path. And something that's extremely exciting for me, for you, for anybody that's been part of this journey, is you might have a realization that what's taking place on this channel, what's taking place in the book If You Live It, what's taking place on the website If You Live It, on all these resources that are being created for you, is that we have created for you modern Buddhism in a way that delivers a recontextualized approach for being in the world but not of it. Not leaving the world to find a sanctuary, to distance yourself from all things that the world might call trappings, but how to have a contemplative lifestyle while in the world, serving your family, serving your friends, serving your community, but applying the same principles, the same approach, with the same goal, the same outcome. At the end of the day, whether it be the Eightfold Path or whether it be the pathway of If You Live It, the 12 steps, and how this book contextualizes things, it's about you walking down it. It's about you making those decisions to do it. It's not about just reading about it. You cannot know God by just reading about God. You cannot have your own experience with divinity, with reaching a place of emptiness and going beyond emptiness, which is not God. It is an expression of consciousness that one can realize, one can come from. And in this conversation, I will espouse to you what emptiness is, what it's like, the descriptions of it, the reality of it, but how going past emptiness delivers you to a place where there's nothing but abundant and infinite love. And the expression of God, the expression of the self, the expression of self-realization at that place is far beyond empty. For there's nothing outside of God. And an ultimate expression and realization and interaction with that which created you while still in human form is far from empty. It's far from being without. It's far from having no attachment to the mind and its goings on. It's far from meditating and finding samadhi. It's something altogether greater, more magnificent, more beautiful. And so today we are going to break into a discussion about understanding Buddhism, understanding the principles, teachings, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, and seeing how this pathway, if you live it, is taking that, not in a way where we're going to say we took it from Buddhism, but in a way where the truth of this pathway that came through this individual to present it in this particular way, in this particular format, in this particular book, is the same truth as the Buddha experienced. And it's the same truth that anybody here designed to be a Buddha can experience and will experience. It's coming from a place of knowingness, from a place of witnessing and observing ultimate truth. I'm not going to represent today what I believe to be true, what someone has told me to be true. We're going to go into the intellect a little bit to have some discussion about the way the Buddhist teachings have been characterized in these Four Noble Truths in this Eightfold Path, how they were delivered to the world. And we're going to use the English language to talk about them briefly as setups for each particular segment. And then once we get into the fourth piece of the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, we're going to have an entire secondary video that goes along with it that's just discussing each principle of the Eightfold Path and how it relates to this particular pathway. Neither is better nor less than the other. They are both coming from absolute truth, from a place of if you walk this, if you do this, the reality is you will have your own experience with divinity. You will understand the divinity that arises out of you is the same divinity that encapsulates and enraptures and captures and is all things all the time, simultaneously, everywhere, no matter what. If you live it as a pathway, Buddhism is a pathway. Aspects of Hinduism is a pathway. Following the teachings and reality of Jesus is a pathway. Being of the heart and going through the heart is a pathway. The mind, the way that Buddhism sets it up, is that the mind is the pathway. Wrangling the mind is the pathway. The reality is there are millions of Buddhists around the world who make this world a better place. They make this place better because they're not about pushing their agenda, their opinion. They're not here to tell you you're wrong. They're not here to incite anger or violence. They're here for right living, right purpose. But there is something missing, which is you will not find God in the mind. You will not find God in the pursuit of only taming the mind. You will find positive benefits from practicing mindfulness, from watching thoughts. You will find practical benefits from your best attempts to tame the mind and separate yourself from being attached to its goings on. But you will not find nirvana from the mind, from taming it, from wrangling it. You don't find nirvana. You don't find Buddhahood in the mind. They're two different paradigms. The paradigm of the mind is what keeps us enslaved and attached to this body, to this world, to the reality that you call yours. Keeps you enslaved to definitions, to belief systems. And so the one big takeaway from this entire thing before we get going is that you do not find God in the mind. Buddhism is a pathway, if taken all the way literal, will most likely leave you in a lifetime still believing that you're going to find God in the mind, or that taming the mind is where God will be found. You have to go past the mind. You have to transcend the mind. You have to surrender over all attachment to the mind, all belief systems that the mind has anything to do with God. And to be perfectly honest, for some watching this, for some born right now, they will transcend the mind without ever practicing Buddhism, without ever practicing mindfulness. They will transcend this entire existence because their karma has put them in such a place that a single decision will lift them into a state of nirvana, not through meditation, not through training thoughts, but because they're here to realize something specific in order to unlock an entire world where consciousness accelerates them into such a place where emptiness is what's present. Now, the reality of emptiness, and if we take it from a viewpoint of Dr. Hawkins' kind of level of consciousness, we're looking at a place 850 to 880, kind of in that 850 to 900 range, which is where Buddhism, if practiced perfectly, integrally, where you realize that the mind is not something that will deliver God to you, but that all the effort and work and surrendering over all of that effort and work will lead you to a place outside the mind. The end goal you will find yourself in a state of enlightenment, and it characterized by emptiness, vastness, withoutness. But it is a misconception that that is the ultimate reality. It is a beautiful reality. It is a state in which there is joy and ecstasy and peace present, because there is nothing but that which is currently being witnessed. There is no attachment to what it is or what it isn't. There are no definitions given, but it is a trap. It's a trap that has to be surrendered over, and it's not a trap in the sense that it's fear-based or that it's ego-based. It's a trap that is the ultimate. And when you reach a place of emptiness, when you reach Buddhahood, when you reach the end of what Buddhism says is the possibility for reaching a place where reincarnation is not needed again, if you stay with emptiness as the finality, you will come back here, because it is not the ultimate. The ultimate is past emptiness. The ultimate is not that there is not something far greater contextually present. The ultimate is beyond emptiness, beyond Satchidananda, beyond samadhi, beyond nirvana, beyond becoming a Buddha. The ultimate is characterized by an effervescent, immense, all-powerful presence of nothing but the characteristic of God that we would call love. Love. We experience God in God's fullest nature while still with this body, surrounded and engulfed with love. Emptiness predates that experience. And if you don't know that you have to transcend and surrender over even your attachment to this state of emptiness, to have an experience of the ultimate reality of truth being the presence of the characteristic of love everywhere, then you will spend lifetimes reincarnating to figure that out. Interestingly enough, emptiness is characterized as without thingness, and that is why it's sticky. That's why it appears as a final destination. But without thingness is transcending the mind in the degree that you're not putting attachment to this or definition to this or that. But the witnessing and observation of the ultimate reality of God is still without definition, but it's so far past without thingness that you come face to face with the reality that all is thingness. And that thingness is the expression of God in this word or definition that we have as love, and bringing it back into the intellect here. When all clouds parted and the reality of the self shone through, it wasn't that there were no things present, no people, no bodies, no separateness present. It was that it's all one thing breathing in and out. All is one. And how can you have no thingness when even a final witness and observation is God, when it arises as its ultimate, is characterized as this single thing? That's without definition. We can't accurately define God. And when these moments arise, and when this moment stays, and when enlightenment sets in as a condition with which your entire experience and lens and the way that you interact with the world recontextualizes everything, and you realize you are not a thing, and what you're looking at is not a thing separate from that thing, it's still thingness. If you have an attachment to the belief system that emptiness is the ultimate, you'll repeat this cycle again and again and again. Now, you'll come back with the opportunity to evolve past that, but you will still come back into suffering. You will still come back into a place where transcending emptiness is a gift provided to you because you've not reached the ultimate. There are many Buddhists who have found nirvana, who have become Buddhas, who are reincarnating because the belief system attached to emptiness being the ultimate is not correct. Not bad, not good, not either or. It's just not correct. And at the end of your belief system around emptiness being the final goal, you will still have remnants of a false belief that you have attachment to that will have to be surrendered over. The Buddha, most commonly characterized Buddha that we talk about as kind of the foundational principle of modern day Buddhism, had a realization as this person talking to you has had the same realization, the same reality. And it's because of that realization, that reality, that this person speaking to you right now has the opportunity to talk from this place, because it sets up an entire opportunity for those to follow, to have the energy present when needed to witness and experience the same thing based on the reporting of what it is, but more importantly, based on the energy that was created by actually traversing it. So we're going to look at the first noble truth right now, which is all is pain and suffering. And let's actually read from a particular location that can be quoted so you can go back to this. So we're going to be pulling this particular definition from the Buddhist Center, which is thebuddhistcenter.com. They start with the first noble truth. First noble truth, all existence is dukkha. The word dukkha has been variously translated as suffering, anguish, pain, or unsatisfactoriness. The Buddha's insight was that our lives are a struggle, and we do not find ultimate happiness or satisfaction in anything we experience. This is the problem of existence. So all is suffering, all is pain, all is unsatisfactoriness. What does that mean? What does it mean that all is pain, all is suffering, all is unsatisfactory? It means, well, you can find out what it means by going back into our past videos because we've talked about this extensively. So if today is unsatisfactory in fulfilling that definition for you, go back into videos, go back into anything we've talked about, go back into the chapters, go back into learning what the book is about, go back into learning about the program, go back into watching videos about who Jesus was, who Krishna is, what the Gita is, how to watch my feet. Watch my feet is not about, look at the shoes this person's wearing. It's about living the pathway of Buddhism, living the pathway of surrender. So what is all is suffering? All is unsatisfactory. The world, content, which is presented to us as what we are and what we operate within, that is unsatisfactory. One has to transcend content, definitions, belief systems, worries, fears, shames, guilts, attachments, cravings, wantings, wantingness, desiring, thinking your way to God. No one thinks their way to God. The mind does not know God. The intellect does not know God. Science cannot disprove or prove God. The best the mind can do is allow a probability or likelihood for something to be true, meaning the mind in and of itself, really the highest degree of truth that it could find is an agnostic perspective, which is in and of itself, it does not know one thing or another, therefore it cannot make a position about. That is about the highest degree of truth the mind can come to in all degrees of honesty. The mind is a content machine. The world is the display of that content. This physical body is the interaction with that content. The brain is a mechanism that takes in stimuli constantly with the mind telling the body what it is that the body should react to or believe or think about or hold true or hold as a falsehood or work through. The mind is the very same thing that tips its hat by finding out about the reality of enlightenment, then pursuing it by looking into the religion of Buddhism, looking into the religion of Hinduism, looking into the teachings of Jesus and in Christianity. The mind believes religion is the pathway, when in reality, the mind and religion are very similar in the fact that both have to be transcended as the pathway to God. The mind and religion are not God. The Four Noble Truths are not God. The Eightfold Path is not God. They are not self-realization. They are a pathway, steps, decisions, choices, opportunities to continue to walk down them. When the Buddha arises or arose from under the Bodhi tree and says, now there is a teaching for me to spread to the world, the teaching is already separated from that realization. The words coming from this mouth are already separated from that realization because we're having to come back into content to tell you about a particular pathway or something you can do to emulate that which was a gift freely given to us by grace. You finding emptiness, you transcending the mind, you letting go of your attachments to belief systems in the world, you practicing meditation for the experience of states of samadhi or for the states of nirvana, or to reach a place where you are no longer attached to the mind in any particular way. The power undergirding that is coming from the allowance of consciousness, with consciousness being something we've talked about before, many times we'll continue to talk about. It's a field of opportunity, potentiality arising. So all around you with regards to this first noble truth, all is suffering. If you attach, stay attached, remain attached. All is craving. The way this entire neurophysiology of the brain is created is to continue to crave more of this content. So the mind has an opportunity to continually live on as that which its entire program basically designed to primarily have you believe, keep you separated from the reality that what you are is far greater than what you see around you. This existence, this place, this realm, this dimension, this earth is one of an infinite amounts of opportunities to experience this, to evolve past this. But where we are here, we have the gift of choice. We have the gift of up. We have the gift of down. We have the gift of definition. We have the gift of choosing God or choosing hell, choosing life or choosing less than, choosing to let go or choosing to attach to, choosing to be angry or choosing to surrender over the anger. Other places are not so fortunate, and other places are vastly more fortunate because what you experience there are heavenly states constantly without any belief that you are separate from that which created you. Here we are purposefully defined as separate. But the ultimate illusion, that which connects to the teachings of the Buddha, that which connects to the teachings of Jesus, that which connects to the teachings of Krishna, that which connects to the teachings of Lao Tzu, that which connects to the teachings of Zoroaster, that which leaves an imprint over time is what pulls the soul through the mind. The mind is woefully insufficient to experience and or witness and or observe the realities of God because the mind is created only to be this thing that operates within content. Therefore, you can't think your way to God. You can't think your way to the self. You can't think your way to self-realization. You can't think your way out of a trap. You can't think your way out of downloading truth and falsehood. You can't think your way out of being incited by something, excited by something. You can train the mind to be more even-keeled. You can train the intellect to understand more of what content is, to understand higher levels of science, to understand psychotherapy versus general counseling, to understand the scientific method, to understand a whole host of things. But understanding and knowing are vastly two different things. And knowing is not the recall of knowledge without having to read it. When we speak of knowing, we speak of a spiritual context of knowing. Knowing surpasses experience because it takes experience to get to a place of knowingness. From knowingness, the jump off points are witnessing and observing, where what you believe you are for most of your life is left at a place where it remains static as a persona, but that which you truly are is having the opportunity to witness what's taking place around you as part of a much larger contextual thing coming and arising out of the potentiality from what things can be out of the gift of consciousness. So the first noble truth being all is suffering is 100% correct, but 100% correct with regards to the person, not regards to the ultimate opportunity. Before this was all presented as a reality to the person talking to you, there was the moment at 20, which I've talked about many times here in these past videos, which is all was left behind and all that was present was perfected love, filling up a room and a person and a body and blowing the mind out, blowing the body away, blowing any attachment to those things whatsoever away and apart from the moment at hand that stretched over an hour but felt like infinity and no time at all. And that was the first glimpse for this individual speaking to you, that there's something far greater than what we call being a human. There's something far greater than the suffering that we have from trying to get. And that's what's at the basis of this first noble truth. The Buddha is 100% correct. All pain and suffering comes from attachments and aversions, fears, cravingness. But it's really the belief system of those things. It's all pain and suffering, all unsatisfactoriness comes from content, not context out of which the content arises. But the content of life will never fill you with love. It will never fill you with joy. It will never create lasting love, joy, and happiness in your life. It's an impossibility. And so when you try to get something from the world, or you take something from the world, or you try to put someone down based on your own insecurities about how you operate in this world, thinking that you are winning, you're not winning. You don't win by using fear. You don't win by using what you would call power, which is really an insecure force trying to dominate another. Buddhism is one of the most beautiful things that we have on this earth because of the pathway that it puts its practitioners on. Those who would call themselves a true Buddhist would not try to dominate you with what the world would call power or force. They simply come from a place where the self-expression of their interaction with the world is one in which they are inquisitive, one in which they are filled with service, one in which they have been called to this particular life in this particular lifetime to practice right action, right work, right thought. And we're going to get into the Eightfold Path. But for now, that's pretty much all that needs to be said about the first Noble Truth. There's more we could say, there's more we could dive into, but that's enough to contextualize this. That's enough to prove the credence to, and also to show the reality that what is speaking to you is not bound by reading this, but is an expression of something that can tell you firsthand experience that this is correct, but correct from a particular lens. So let's look at the second Noble Truth. And again, we are going to come from the Buddhist-center.com, okay? Just so we have a shared definition, a shared vocabulary here, and you could express it however you would like to, but this is where we're going to come from. This is where we're going to point back to. So the second Noble Truth, the cause of dukkha is craving. And again, dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, okay? So the cause of dukkha is craving. The natural human tendency is to blame our difficulties on things outside of ourselves. But the Buddha says that their actual root is to be found in the mind itself, in particular our tendency to grasp at things, or alternatively to push them away. Places us fundamentally at odds with the way life really is. So, first Noble Truth, all existence is dukkha. Physical world is dukkha. Content is dukkha. It sets up dukkha. It's all one dukkha machine. And number two, the cause of dukkha is craving. And we would take that one step further. We would say the origin. And let's look at the difference between cause and origin. And you'll see this as you're doing your own research, as you've had your own expression of faith in with regards to Buddhism or Hinduism or Taoism or something else that looks to transcend the mind as the root of its origin. Okay? Cause and effect is a mechanism of the mind. It is not a higher truth than potentiality arises into physicality or manifesting as that which we see in content or that which we experience. In a particular light or particular paradigm of existence, and we'll look at science, they're continually looking for the cause and effect of something. This causes that. This causes that. You know, we have a new drug because we found that 17% of the drug trial has caused this effect or has caused this to happen. But in reality, there is no cause and effect. There is no duality. There is no this or that. Now, from the lens of the mind, from the lens of content, from the lens of suffering, from the lens of dukkha, from the lens of the way this is being characterized as us placing attachments and aversions onto the world through the mind, it appears there is a cause and effect. But from an ultimate reality, from a much higher truth, there is only potentiality manifesting due to the field of consciousness and the allowance of love operating within it with regards to the opportunity to create choice forever at infinitum. So therefore, the evolutionary process of creation can continue as it was created to continue. Again, the mind is not where you find God. Taming the mind is not where you find God. Taming the mind is where you find some general peace from anxiety or the thought machine or the belief that you are your thoughts. But something as simple as using the work, as Byron Katie calls it, is also an applicable tool to have you transcend the mind in a faster way than practicing for 40 years Buddhism. And it's an applicable tool for any Buddhist to see that they have thoughts, but they're not their thoughts. They have feelings, they're not their emotions, and their feelings and their everything else that arise from the content machine of this particular physicality operating within the world. Our religion is not God. The Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path are not God. They're not the self realizing the self. It's a pathway that you walk down, steps you take. We don't worship the religion of Christianity. We don't worship the Bible. We don't worship the Upanishads or the Gita or the Mahabharata or the Vedas. We don't worship these things. We pay homage to them. We emulate them. And any of these figures, whether it be Jesus or the Buddha or Krishna, they don't want your worship either. God doesn't need your worship. Appreciate the gift of higher truths and the witnessing and observation of much higher truths through your gratitude, through the way you interact with the world, not through proselytizing about it, not through promoting a religion, not by saying this pathway is greater than this pathway, but by the greatest gift you can give to the world is growing as close to God as possible, growing as close to truth as possible without proselytizing about it, and then being an example of that truth. The entirety of Buddhism is about surrender, forgiveness, and coming from a place of realization, the same as the pathway of if you live it, the same as everything we've been talking about. It's all part of the contextualized higher truths that come from knowing this path once one has transcended content, once one has transcended pathways in general. You have to have a pathway in order to move down it in a way that shows intent towards something higher or greater than what you truly are right now. Pathways are required. We live in this world where we have to transcend believing we are this world in order to see that this world is but this ultimate gift of reality that can be a completely different reality subjectively than what 99.99999% of mankind forever has experienced. The gift of this place is that you no longer have to subjectively come from a place of intro or exteroception, in a belief that you are this thing, or you are this world, or you are this body, or you are separated from God. You can have your own experience with the realization of self, with truth, with Buddhahood, with Christhood, with whatever you choose to call it, with coming from a higher self, with enlightenment. Terms don't matter. The realization of what all is what matters. Many of you who are watching this might have a desire to pursue, let's say, enlightenment because you have a certain belief system attached to what that means. And that's fantastic because pursue it, dive into it, run towards it. Chasing God is the same thing as saying produce enlightenment, chasing God, chasing truth, the realization of self. Same thing, okay? If that's where you are because something entices you to it, run after it. Run after it. Just know that the thing that entices you is also the thing that you have to transcend. Okay, so the first noble truth is that all is suffering. But what is all? In this context, it is content. The mind, the brain, the body, the physical world. That is what produces suffering. That's what creates this gift of choice, this evolutionary process of creation that's continual at all times, here and elsewhere. It's not as if you leave this physical world and arrive at a place where choice is still not present. Because choice, the way we use this word, the way we understand it, is creation. God is constantly choosing love and creation. Forever. Here we experience as A, B. I have to get from A to B. In the reality of God, there is no A, B. There just is. There's no need to get from one place to another. You are always present at all times, everywhere. That's consciousness. And when you take it a step further, what you realize with the final unfoldment of the reality of God as being something vastly greater than emptiness is that it is fullness. It is not no thingness. It is without a single form, but yet the form is singular in its infinite nature. All things is one thing. You can't experience that in the mind. Intellectually, you may gravitate towards that. You may see that. You may feel that. You may even understand that, but you don't know that. Okay, so one is content. The content machine is suffering. We stay enslaved to this content machine for lifetime after lifetime based on our attachments and our aversions, our expectations, our cravings. This thing and this thing. And when we think that this and this are two separate things and not one thing, you stay stuck to the mind. So let's look at the third. third noble truth. Number 3. Again, we're looking at this from the lens of the Buddhistcenter.com. We've looked at the Four Noble Truths, number 1 and number 2 so far. We're diving into number 3. Number 3, the cessation of dukkha comes with the cessation of craving. Dukkha, don't forget, anguish, suffering, pain, unsatisfactoriness, okay? Number 3, the cessation of dukkha comes with the cessation of craving. As we are the ultimate cause of our difficulties, we are also the solution. We cannot change the things that happen to us, but we can change our responses. Again, you don't find God by changing your responses. You don't find God because of a pathway. A pathway takes you to a place where you see changing your responses, surrendering over your attachments and your cravings to the content machine will inevitably lead you to a place where you realize you're not even these choices to begin with. And another truth that comes from the ultimate reality of the self presenting itself is that you're not making choices anyways, that it's an illusion regardless. That's one of the most wild, simple flips of scripts that was made present in such a way that it blew the mind out. The mind had no capacity to even interact post that realization, that single realization that you're not doing anything anyways, because you is already a fiction. You is already an illusion. You is what you're transcending. You is what operates within the content world. You or me or they or we or him or her are already separated from truth. Language has already separated you to a point that it's building an attachment to the belief system that you exist. You as being something separate from that which created you. You as being separate from the infinite nature of God present at all times in all ways as all things. The mind can't show you that. It's not worth spending. If your goal is the realization of self, is Buddhahood, is being free from rebirth and death, truly, 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 truly listen to what is being said right here. You cannot transcend the mind with the mind. You cannot transcend you with you. The Buddha was not through will and effort found God because of the will and effort. The grace of the field of consciousness that had potentiality baked in as a oneness with that which created it allowed for the intent of the Buddha to inform decisions that put him on a pathway to walk down until all was transcended and able to come from a place of reporting back that this is a noble pathway, that this is a path worth traversing. But the Buddha, even in his own words, said, this is not truth. This can only help you push towards it. And I would tell you here that it is up to you to set your intent and choose a pathway and walk down that pathway. But it's not the pathway that delivers you to God. It's the field that creates the potentiality that the intent and karma allow to build in such a way that once certain things are transcended, what's left is a degree of emptiness, no thingness, no attachment. And in that particular situation, what arises is the field that allows the experiencer to meld into the witnesser, which shows the higher realities producing an entirely different way subjectively to interact with the world until one reaches a final place where all belief systems are let go of, all attachments are let go of, all aversions are let go of. The pathway is not providing this opportunity. The pathway is yet the steps that take you and allow your intent to inform your karma to come to a place where you can say, God, in and of myself, in this final degree, I choose not to even have thyself. I surrender this life, existence, any belief system, the mind in its entirety. You will never find God in the mind. You have to move through the mind. like was stated to start this particular part, when the realization that you aren't doing anything anyways, but that this field operates in such a way that the illusion of choice actually perpetuates the opportunity for much different choices, much different realities, then you can see the beautiful gift of the Buddha's teaching, of Krishna's teaching, of Jesus' teaching. It's not the teaching that creates enlightenment. It's not the teaching that creates Buddhahood. It's not the teacher that does any of this. The gift of the teacher is that they have been there and they're telling you what it is. And they're reporting back contextually the content that appeared to be that which helped deliver the personage to the ultimate person. If You Live It is based on what took place, and the result of what took place wasn't because of choices and steps, but those choices and steps are designed to help you move through personhood, personage, person, you. Even the word I, which is the closest thing that we can actually say to the reality of God, I is still separate. It's still creating a separateness because it's pointing back to. Now, when you think of I in the capital letter of I, intellectually, you can see I in greater or lesser degrees of intensity is a way that God can be characterized and our reality of God can be characterized and our reality of working in this world can be characterized, but it is not still God. You have to surrender over your attachment even to the belief system that the pathway you're walking down is what will deliver you to the ultimate reality of God, because it will only take you to a doorway. And then it is up to God, the grace of God, the grace of consciousness, grace of divinity, and the karma where your life is particularly at that point and where it's headed, that doorway opens. And that doorway will open several times, and you will witness truth in such a way that it recontextualizes things and lets you know there is something yet to be witnessed further or observed further or experienced further. But when that doorway finally opens, it's not you necessarily walking through. It's quite literally the body staying on one side of the door and opening into the other side of the door, no longer with body, but leaving the body behind. And what you're leaving behind is not the physicalized body, because you remain with this thing while you remain physicalized in this existence, but the body remains the content machine. And forever from that point forward, when the soul is brought forward, what happens is you're operating now from a place where you're no longer attached to the body. You're no longer attached to the thoughts, to the mind. It doesn't mean that the mind and the antenna of such is not picking up on things that have to continually forever be surrendered and transcended as well. But what it means is you're no longer a slave to the cravingness, to dukkha, to the world, to unsatisfactoriness. Because those definitions are part of the mind, they're part of the body. Now we're going to move into the last noble truth, which will set up our part B of this, which is where we're going to dive into the Eightfold Path and what that actually is and what that looks like in a modern world and what that looks like contextualized through If You Live It, and to a degree what that looks like through Buddhism. But we're saying the same thing. So we're going to let go of calling it one thing or another, and let's just look at it. Fourth noble truth. There is a path that leads from dukkha. Although the Buddha throws responsibility back on the individual, he has also taught methods through which we can change ourselves. For example, the Noble Eightfold Path. For example, If You Live It. For example, the 12 steps. Which at the root of it is surrender and forgiveness. The root of it is service. Being of service. I hope there was something here that resonated with you, that you found relief from, that caused your intellect to maybe even strike out against. Anywhere there's fear in your life, anywhere there's an illusion in your life, anywhere you have an attachment to a particular belief system, when a higher truth comes in and recontextualizes it, you can feel it internally, like a beautiful butterflies, like a beautiful gut punch. I don't care if you believe anything that was said today. I don't believe anything that was said today. I don't care what you choose to do the rest of your life. What's being provided to you is a teaching. It is coming from much higher truths than the content machine. What's being provided to you today is God speaking directly to you about how to actually know God, how to experience, then witness, then be the observer of the reality of truth in such a way that you never again believe the mind is anything other than something that can be pesky at times, beneficial at others, but yet at the end of the day isn't worth holding on to any attachments to any longer. I'm Mason Woldridge, the author of If You Live It, and I'm here to be a teacher for you. Many blessings, much love, and I look forward to seeing you as part of Part B, where we break down the Eightfold Path. See what that has in store for us. Many blessings. Yeah.